Okay, well, I saw the Goku versus Superman video a couple of weeks ago, 2.5, 3, I don't know. And I've been commenting on it a lot to the point that YouTube considers my comments spam because I just um, I like debating and I can't stand ignorance. Um, well, First, I'll comment on the video itself. No offense to the sources that they used, but their feats and facts that they presented, I think they either forgot some or some were left out one way or the other. They just weren't there. Basically, Superman's fastest, strongest, most durable feats weren't there. Um, I don't know a terrible lot about Dragon Ball Z. That was always my brother's thing, and I haven't had the chance to get together with him to ask him about his input on it. And he never really read the manga. Um, he didn't really read. He doesn't like reading. It puts him to sleep. He generally watched the anime, and so that was pretty much my experience with it. Was seeing bits of the anime and AMVs made from the anime that he downloaded. Um, but there have been a number of people who commented that they weakened Goku or didn't take his best feats into account, which is very possible. But the makers of the video did mention that his feats were extremely inconsistent. Superman's are as well, which I'll admit, but his reason being because he never starts a fight at full strength, which it's because he has so much power that he doesn't want to kill anyone. He is completely opposed to killing. Hell, when Wonder Woman killed Maxwell Lord, he was disturbed and I'd say a little disgusted. And that's one of his best friends. They removed that aversion to killing, though, for the fight, and so he should have been fighting full tilt from the beginning instead of holding back. And he was holding back. I won't really comment on any more of the actual fight, because, as they said in the Side Scrollers episode, Reactionary Reactions, it was purely for entertainment. It was one of many ways Superman could have won. It just happened to be the one they came up with, probably to make it look cool. And I say one of the many ways Superman could have won because just there are so many other ways that he could have won, probably faster, a lot less interesting, and so on. They also admitted that it wasn't a fair fight because Superman so vastly outranks Goku in feats. It can be seen in the numbers. Hell, someone multiplied Goku's abilities by 1,000,000,000, and he was still weaker than Superman. I'll get to that later, though. Before that, I will comment on, well, comments. There have been some pretty rabid Goku fans lately on the Goku vs. Superman death battle. Of course, no one wants to see their hero lose. And if it's true that they, weakened Goku, then I certainly can't fault them for being angry about that. And there have also been a few sore winners among Superman fans, and I'm glad that they generally just kind of make their comment and then leave, because they really don't make the rest of us look very good. The ones that really bother me among the Goku fans are the ones that repeat. Basically, they just try to tear down Superman, um, in order to make Goku sound better, like calling Superman gay, a pussy, super pussy man, boring, whatever. They insult him, as if that somehow makes Goku better, and it really it just reflects on Goku very poorly that he's got fans that are like that. Just like the bad fans of Superman reflect so poorly on him. Um, of course, as I said, no one wants to see their hero lose. The most vehement people, though, there are Goku fans. I can't blame them. They probably only know Superman from if And if they have read any comics, most of them probably only know him from a few issues. But the more likely case is that if any of them actually know anything about Superman, they probably know it from the animated series, such as Justice League, the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, um, Superman, the animated series, Legion of Superheroes, as short-lived as of a cartoon as it was, or Young Justice, which hasn't really showcased Superman very much. Um, or the animated movies such as Superman Doomsday, All-Star Superman, the two Batman Superman public, movies, Public Enemies, and I can Apocalypse. That was the one with Supergirl. Or Justice League Doom, or Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. Just a number of um, animated movies that DC came out with based on uh, actual comic books, such as Superman versus the Elite being based on What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Then there's the live action movies, Lois and Clark and Smallville, which is probably the extent to most of the Goku fans' knowledge of Superman. Now, I don't consider myself a sore winner. I just can't stand ignorance, especially when people don't bother to learn that the animated series, any of the very truncated animated movies, because they basically take actual comic book stories that are span a number of issues, and if they actually made a movie that covered all the stuff in the comic book, they'd be a lot longer than an hour and a half. But if they learn from those, or Lois and Clark, or Smallville, they aren't canon. In fact, Smallville has its own canon in comic books. It's called Smallville Season 11, and it is not related to the main DC universe. The Superman movies that Christopher Reeve was in, as much as I love him as Superman, those movies are not canon either. They're not even really modern age, given that the first two were made during the Bronze Age, pre-Crisis. Someone made a video a couple years ago about Goku versus Superman, comparing the fight with Darkseid at the end of Superman the Animated Series and Goku from the anime. Bad example. Laughably bad. Honestly. For one, people who don't really care much for Superman won't generally write him as he should be written. See Frank Miller. All those people who argue that Batman can beat Superman because of Return of the Dark Knight fail to recall, well, one, Return of the Dark Knight isn't canon either. It's an Elseworld story. So it can't be counted as the main continuity either. But in that story, Batman had a suit that made it easier for him and helped him be stronger. But he also had help and tons of pre-planning. He had Robin, his Robin in that story, shoot Clark with some kind of tank firearm or tank weapon, and he had Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, shoot him with kryptonite, a kryptonite arrow, to weaken him further. But take this into account. That same Superman, which was probably one of the weaker examples of him, became emaciated and, struggled after being hit by a radioactive warhead. That wouldn't have happened to him in modern age comics. I don't think that would have happened to him in Silver or Bronze Age comics either. As far as I know, there's no real example of Superman being that weak to a warhead. In Death Battle, Batman would lose so quickly, simply based on the parameters that they give them. No prior knowledge, no prep time, and no outside help. They basically take away Batman's superpowers, which is prep time and resources. Can't forget the billions. Unless, of course, they presented kryptonite into the fight like they did with Goku. There are people. Okay, another thing that people say is that Goku can defeat gods. The problem with that is, so can Superman. Darkseid, Orion, Ares, and so on. He's defeated Thor, both Marvel and DC versions. And yes, the new gods are in fact gods. For example, Darkseid is actually a god. Um, the Superman even defeated a handful of gods when Lois was turned into the goddess of integrity by some evil gods who wanted her to abuse the power and bring her father back to life. The problem with using Goku's ability to defeat Kami is that the Japanese don't really look at the idea of God quite as Western cultures do. In most Western cultures, and not just America here, but in most Western cultures, there is the idea of this omnipotent, omnipresent, a whole bunch of things being. In the DCU, that is the presence, the source, both basically the same thing. It is the all-powerful I am, which I take from the Bible, from when God tells Moses, I am that I am. When Westerners think of gods, that's usually the kind of power we ascribe to them. We associate them with the concept of God that we are most familiar with. However, the kami are gods more on a level of what you would see in Xena or the Xena or Hercules TV shows. Basically, they're just people with a lot of powers. They're not completely undefeatable. And when you talk about a god or several gods, they still aren't the same as the one overshadowing God. When Goku defeats God, as in the God of Abraham or some equivalent, then yeah, then I'll be a bit more impressed, because Superman hasn't done that either. And I don't think he can. In fact, I know he can't unless he becomes basically God himself. Now, I will admit that they probably weakened Goku. They slowed him down, at least if he actually flew the diameter of the Earth in a second. Then they definitely did not take into account his full flight speed. However, even at his peak, his strength, speed, durability, and so on are not in Superman's league. That doesn't make him a bad character. I'll admit, I don't really like Goku. Not for anything he's capable of, but because, and I'm going to put it the nicest way I know how, I don't care for his extreme naivete. His wife is also a shrew, so I don't find a particular appeal in her. He's a lousy father and husband who is more concerned with training than spending time with his family. And yeah, those are my issues with him. If you can see past that and enjoy him as a character, that's your bag. That's their, Goku fans' bag. That's fine. I don't, say you're evil because you like Goku. No, that's stupid. I don't fault people for the characters they like, but I would appreciate it that others have the same courtesy. Yes, he's a battle genius, but in real life situations where brains actually matter, he needs some help. That's okay, though. But when I argue for Superman, I argue for Superman. I don't argue against Goku. I don't know enough about Goku to argue against him. The problem is that every Goku fan seems to be a, plethora of knowledge about Superman. And the problem is they're generally not. What they know comes from TV or movies. And it doesn't work like that because those aren't canon. So, I mean, if you're a Goku fan, just stick to arguing for Goku. instead of against Superman, unless you plan on doing a lot of research and a lot of reading so that, you actually have a leg to stand on. I like Superman. His Boy Scout demeanor, his helpfulness, his generosity, his idealism, his faith in humanity. The fact that humanity is what inspires him to do what he does. Heck, I love the fact that he loves Lois, flaws and all, because she is imperfect and so human. She is the face of humanity to him. Her integrity, her character all appeal to him. The fact that he loves her because of her flaws as well. As a woman who will freely admit that I have my own flaws, I appreciate being loved for them as part of what makes me who and what I am, and it makes me appreciate Superman as a character even more. However, there are some people who don't like this idea of absolute goodness. There are people who call him boring, either because of his personality, such as the fact that he'll stop to help people with things that most people wouldn't even blink an eye at, such as helping a little girl get her kitty cat out of a tree, coming to a Shabbat dinner with a Shabbat, I can't recall how that's pronounced if there are any Jews out there. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. A Shabbat dinner with an elderly Jewish couple to hear the husband's concerns about what he does, or because he's already really powerful and doesn't really have a story that revolves around him getting stronger. There are points where he does get stronger, like when Mongol 2 shows him how to fight and whatnot, uh, helps him get stronger so that he can fight in Periex. But that's not what his story's all about. Um, he's an alien, you know? An alien raised as a farm boy who's just trying to find his place, trying to figure out where he fits, trying to, you know, be with the people that matter to him. There are people who say that he should abuse his power, or not be monogamous with a woman who simply fascinates him. That he should go out and sow his wild oats or something because he has all of these space chicks throwing themselves at him. Yeah, he does. But people need to remember he's a farm boy. He was raised with simple old school values, and I love that about him. Others don't, because they can't wrap their minds around those ideals. I can accept that. Being good is always difficult. Being bad, being evil, is extremely easy. There was one point when Batman actually got Superman's powers, I believe, in the Superman or Batman Superman comic book. And I think he commented about how easy it would be to lose control. And he actually, while having Superman's powers, did begin to lose his mind and kind of go apeshit on everything. Because it is, power corrupts. It's a cliche. It's a cliche for a reason. But, in the series, Batman actually gained a new respect for Superman, at least in that continuity. But I will say, Superman isn't necessarily someone you're supposed to relate to. If you want to relate to someone in the comic, relate to Clark or Jimmy or the guy who, or Perry or the guy who does the sports page, whoever. You're supposed to aspire to be like Superman. He's pretty much a Christ figure. It kind of like all of that, what would Jesus do crap that people wear. He's someone you should want to act like, to be good, to be honest, to be fair, generous, all those good things. You're supposed to aspire to be Superman while relating to Clark. Admittedly, I suppose Clark is a bit is a bit of a difficult character for a lot of guys to relate to, because he's the genuine article. He is a really, truly, honestly nice guy, a good person. He keeps in touch with his parents. He listens to his father's advice. He is always there whenever he can be for the woman he loves. When he had an adopted kid, he was always there for that kid to be a father figure. He found time to do all of that and, you know, feed, aid feeding third world countries and whatnot. So I guess his character he's just a lot of good things that are kind of lost anymore. So I guess his character just doesn't appeal to modern sensibilities and the way most people look at things. More people try to aspire to be Batman. I mean, he's dark, he's emo, he's a multi-billionaire, he's got tons of gadgets as a ninja, knows over 100 martial arts, is a master of them too, speaks a number of languages, is a jet-setting playboy as his public face, and has something like 12 degrees according to the Batman-Spider-Man death battle. And he's how old again? Where did he find the time? Not to mention that he has tons of women throwing themselves at him. His parents are conveniently dead, so he doesn't really have to listen to them. Their expectations or other pressures parents put on children don't really matter. And the closest he's ever gotten to a monogamous relationship was with Silver St. Cloud, and that didn't last. So he's basically a modern guy's wet dream. Sorry to paint you all with such a broad stroke, but come on now. If you yourselves don't find Batman to be a wet dream of what your life could be, then I'm pretty sure that you know someone who would look at that life as that. Superman's story is far simpler. He wants far less. He wants a simple life, a happy life. If his story doesn't appeal to others, so be it. Goku's doesn't appeal to me either. I prefer Vegeta, Bulma, and Android 18, personally, though. I preferred Android 18 when she was actually still an android, but she'd be dead if she didn't become human. So, get some, you lose some. Now, there are people that say Goku should have used the kryptonite against Superman, which admittedly would have killed him. It would have taken a while, but it would have killed him. Eventually. And it would have weakened him to the point that Goku probably could have killed him. But what does that prove? Seriously. I have to ask at this point, what would it prove if Goku won only by exploiting a crippling weakness? That he can't beat Superman on his own merit? That he needs what is basically outside help? I'll leave that to people to answer. If Goku actually used the kryptonite as a weapon, how many of you would have really been satisfied, given that it doesn't prove anything, except that he can beat a weakened Superman? Anyway, on and on we go. They gave Goku the power pole. Some people complained about this. Some people argued for it. Well, either way, it's magic, and that's probably why they gave it to him, to help give him every advantage that they could, because at least one of them admitted to being a Goku fan. Probably also why they put the kryptonite in there and gave him senzu beans. I won't complain about those. Actually, I think Goku needed as much help as he could get. The power pole wasn't even used at any point in Dragon Ball Z, I believe, especially not while he was a Super Saiyan. Feel free to confirm or deny. There were also people who had issues with GT, it not being canon or something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I didn't see too many episodes of GT. My brother tended to stick to Z. Now, someone brought up a point somewhere that either Superman should have gone to the DBZ universe or Goku should have gone to the DC universe. Well, I will say that Superman going to the DBZ universe is far more fair for Goku than the DC one. As the DC universe, from my experience, has no concept beyond the concept of ki. Basically, ki in the DCU is an idea, not an actual power. It has never been used as a power, so basically all of Goku's abilities would probably be useless. And he'd be restricted to his physical prowess and martial arts, because then he would be falling under the rules of the DCU. If I am wrong about ki in the DCU thing, please provide comic issues where I can find otherwise, because I have looked. The Dragon Ball Z universe would be much more fair, but probably not by much. All things considered, Dragon Ball is an action comedy series, and an action comedy shonen series at that. So basically, the most mundane things are all blown out of proportion. So imagine Superman's action drama powers taken to 11 for comedic purpose. And no. I'll let others think about that for me. I think that it would have been better to have them on a totally different Earth. That way they could both follow the rules of their respective universes, but then you wouldn't have had kryptonite. Either way, on to the power measuring. I am not taking into account any of the animated movies, the live action movies, Lois and Clark, Smallville, or any medium outside of the comics, the source material. The source. Alright. I don't think they actually calculated certain things. Like the time he held that piece of matter in his hand where he was struggling to keep it. The one that they showed in the video at 1350. It was basically a compacted star. Our sun is a pretty small star, so I will use it as an example of weight. Sol, our sun, Sol, weighs in at 4 nonillion pounds, scientists speculate, or 2 nonillion kilograms. To put that into perspective, that is 30 zeros after that. 10 commas, and he was struggling to hold that. Strike force wise, he has made comments about punches he has thrown, such as when he was fighting Convict. He commented to himself, or the reader, that he had hit him hard enough to shatter small planets, despite the creature not being knocked into orbit from it. That was an extremely durable being, hard enough to shatter small planets. To measure his speed, take into account feats that have taken him through hyperspace. Simply flying, he flew from the star of Vega back to Earth after somehow hearing Jimmy's signal watch. Serious superhearing. In about 5 or 10 minutes. Take into account that Vega is about 25.5 light years from Earth. That speed certainly trumps the almost 2 minutes that it took him to fly the 8.5 light minutes to the sun, while fighting Wonder Woman and thinking she was Doomsday. In Birthright, which is considered to be canon, as a second origin story for him, it establishes that Krypton is in the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light years from Earth. Superman, both the Kal-El as in the letter, the older Superman from Earth 2, and Kal-El, the canon Superman from New Earth, flew to Krypton after going after Superboy Prime, who was attacking Oa. And then they flew him through Rao, Krypton's sun, and they landed on Mogo. That's neither here nor there, though. I just wanted to mention Mogo. The point is that they flew to the Andromeda Galaxy. I'm sure there are points after Birthright where Superman has flown to the Krypton area, which would also be, again, in the Andromeda Galaxy. But, yeah. That's a long way. But people make good points about the difference between combat speed and flight or running speed. That's true. However, they also didn't touch on how fast Superman would have to vibrate his body in order to become intangible, just by standing there, just vibrating his molecules. How would one measure that, though? If he can move individual molecules of his body that quickly, though, I can easily see him moving his arms and legs quickly. There are people, however, who say that Superman never fights at that speed. To the contrary, there are several instances showing him fighting at the point that it looks like he's landing various different blows in one panel, suggesting that he is moving at super speeds while fighting. There is a scene of him fighting Imperiex where it appears that he is coming at him in the same pose from all around him, like after images of himself, not only after images hitting him at different times, but all coming in at the same time. How fast would one have to move to hit someone pretty much at a speed where you are hitting them from several different angles at the exact same time? Hmm. I don't know. That kind of thing isn't my thing. I'm not too good at math. So, hmm. If you feel like answering, please tell me. He can also perform delicate maneuvers at this sort of speed. After breaking the sound barrier, moving to save Lois and Jimmy, Superman had enough time to stuff their ears with cotton so that they wouldn't end up with concussions from the sonic boom. He also thinks this quickly. That would be his reaction time, is how fast he thinks. Because while he's flying at these top speeds, he's thinking about how fast he has to go. He's doing calculations of air velocity, pressure, pressure of the air, temperature, what he's flying through, whether he's flying through a city. He won't fly through a city at the same speed he would through a jungle because he doesn't want to basically break buildings and stuff. But he stuffed their ears with cotton so gently that neither of them even noticed that they had cotton in their ears. He also saved Lois in the span of a gunshot on a number of occasions. Once, when Livewire's brother kidnapped her and was ready to shoot her, he shot the bullet a couple of feet away from her, maybe 3. Then Superman took off and caught it within a few inches of Lois's face. It was a revolver, and their bullets often travel around 870 feet per second. There was probably 3 feet between Lois and the guy. Superman was across town when he took off. The bullet fired before he took off. If you feel like doing the math, that's 3 feet from Lois's face. The gun being 3 feet from Lois's face. 870 feet per second. My math sucks, but I'm pretty sure that he hit at least Mach 1. However fast he was going, he wasn't so worried once he knew where she was that he was above thinking, "I'm coming, Lois, and don't worry. It's just a speeding bullet." And it turns out I'm faster than those. He is also capable of speeding up his senses so that he sees the world like Flash does. And if he's able to speed up his senses so that he sees the world like Flash does, where everything appears to be frozen in place, which is how he put it, his thoughts have been faster than nanoseconds, as has his reaction time. If his brain and if his brain is able to work that fast, how can he not speed up his body to go as fast as he's thinking? Yes, I know there are many situations where Superman is beaten. Different writers, different situations. However, Superman is also known to hold back, which would have been removed for the death battle, of course. That would have made the fight a lot shorter. Suffice to say, as much as people like Goku, and it's nice that you like him, he just can't defeat Superman. Uh, Feel free to comment, argue, debate. I'm open to it all. I enjoy it. I do enjoy debate. It's kind of my bread and butter. So I'm actually curious as to what people say. Sorry, it's so long. It's actually almost longer. I'd say it's almost longer than the death battle, and I apologize for that. Anyway, have a good night, day, whatever.